Renfro Middle School. If you don't know who I am, I'm the principal. I'm Greg Wiseman. This is I think our fourth Decatur Parents Network presentation we've done this year.
Yeah.
We did one on stress and anxiety in teens. We've done a big data walk on alcohol and drug use amongst teens. We did one on vaping, and now these 40 essential steps. And so I'd like to welcome Terry and Jen from the Decatur Parents Network. We feel we're qualified to do these because we've never made a mistake in our lives in raising our own children. So we just want to pass on. So no, we know how challenging it is, and so it's been great to have folks come in and help us with just making the right choices and having kids make the right choices, so we can they can succeed at home and at school and every place else. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Terry. Thank you.
And hello everybody. My first request is what I need to be doing myself, which is if you haven't silenced your phones, silence or buzz or whatever you need to do to vibrate. Welcome everybody. This is, it's very exciting, the first speaker series of the new year, and we do have more planned for February, March I believe we're looking at sexuality, which should be a really good one, and so we're looking at a couple of other things, maybe something on bullying. Some of y'all seem to want vaping part 2, but welcome. The Decatur Parent Network is, how many of y'all are members of the network now? And you're getting our emails, so you know you're a member, okay. If you're not a member, please go on and sign up. We'll contact you after tonight one time, ask you if you're interested and instruct you on how to sign up if you're not a member. We've been focusing on building community among our parents so that when something does happen in your life, you will already have relationships established with people so you can go, oh, Deb, my God, you won't believe what Brianna has done now. Because that has happened for us, too, as leaders, not just for you guys in the community. So, again, welcome. I am really excited to present the speaker for tonight to you guys. This is not her first rodeo with the Parent Network. Actually, she helped us the very first night that we kicked off. This March will be 3 years now, guys, and we're almost 350 strong for members. We're hoping to hit 400 this year, and about 250 friends. So we're really excited about that. Jessica was at our first one, and then came back a couple of years ago to work with us. And we asked her back again because I will tell you guys, the stuff she presents tonight, the first time I ever heard it, I went, oh my God, that's so practical. Oh my God, that makes so much sense. Other than all the other things we were twisting ourselves in prevention trying to figure out, this just made sense to me. And so Jessica is now the Executive Director of GUIDE, Gwinnett United in Drug Education. She also lives right on the outskirts of Decatur. She's kind of like me. I don't live that close, but I want to be for Decatur. And I always tell folks that I feel like she's one of my own because I have known Jessica since she was 15. Okay.
Which was just like 7 years ago.
7 or 8 years ago.
We're not that
and
old.
She was actually involved with the Georgia Teen Institute and the youth action teams. And we now in Decatur, as some of you guys know, we also have our own youth action team still here in Decatur. And so she has grown up in prevention. So with that, I will give you Jessica Andrews-Wilson.
Thank you. Hi. I'm so excited to be here. I love getting an opportunity, to not have to be in Gwinnett late at night, to get to be near my house. So I got to spend some time with my family before I came over here, which was fantastic. But B, to talk about the 40 developmental assets and to talk about this stuff, because I run a prevention agency and we talk a lot about the other stuff that the Parent Network has done the speaker series on. We talk about the terrible data that we're seeing coming out of the schools, and oh my gosh, all the things our kids are doing. And we talk about the vaping, and we talk about the opioid use and prescription drugs and all of that kind of stuff, and too often we forget to talk about the positive stuff. And that's what this is all about. This is all about, the 40 developmental assets are all about what are the things that our kids do have in their lives that help protect them from those negative behaviors, those high-risk behaviors, those dangerous things that we want them protected from. That's why it's common sense, because we know this stuff. And that's one of my slides toward the end, is this is common sense. We just need to make it common practice. It's stuff that we just need to do a little bit of tweaking of what are we already doing, what's already working. A part of this is this parent network to begin with, is the fact that you do have parents that you can call and say, hey, are you dealing with this? I don't have a teenager yet. I have an almost 5-year-old who thinks he's a teenager, and if the amount of door slamming that we've had in the last 3 days is any indication of what teenage years are going to be like, I'm going to need the parent network. But what I have already found, even in just these short 5 years, is how valuable it is to have parent friends that I can call and say, oh my God, is Eleanor doing this? Because Finnegan is driving me up the wall, and this is what he's doing. And to have another parent who says, yeah, that's exactly what's happening at our house too. That's 3. That's 4. This is what they're doing. They all just, his whole little pre-K class just went through a real rough patch because all of them were being mean to each other. And they're really good friends, and there's only 9 of them, and they're good buddies. But the teachers were like to every parent, like, you got to fix this with your kid. And like 4 of us got on a text message, like, what are you doing? How are we going to handle this? Because they are good friends, and we want them to be successful in school, and none of us want the teacher coming out to the carpool to tell us how bad our kid was that day. And so having that support group, even now, and I was just telling Deb, I'm devastated. I do live on the outskirts. Most of his little buddies are going to Winona Park next year, and we will not be. And I'm like, I got to make new parent friends. So I'm so glad that you have this network and that you're a part of this, because that is a piece of the 40 developmental assets and a piece of what we can do that's proactive for our kids and that's positive and that can help kind of buffer what they are faced with when they walk through the doors of the school, when they walk down the streets, when they are surrounded by their peers here, and when they go to the high school, when they go off into college, when they go to the workforce, whatever that is. Assets are something that stay with us throughout our whole lives. And so I want to demonstrate what we're talking about before we get into the specifics of it, by having you think about somebody who made a difference in your life. So we're going to use this technique that I love. I use this all the time when I'm training adults and when I'm training young people, because it is guaranteed to get them to engage more in what you're doing and to share with you. And I'll share a secret with those of you who have middle school and high school students. It works with them. And so if this is something that you think might work with your kid, try it. It's super simple. It's called WIBIT, which just stands for Write It Before You Talk. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now on the PowerPoint or whatever you have in front of you that you would like to write on is to think back to your childhood when you were growing up. At any age, you can think super young if that's what first comes to mind, or all the way up to a young adult. Think about an adult who made a positive difference for you. Somebody who really showed you love and support at a time that you needed it in your life, or an adult who got you really excited about learning new things and engaged in the classroom or an after-school club or something like that. Or think about an adult who helped you kind of connect to your community. Maybe it was a faith-based youth group, or maybe it was a volunteer service opportunity, but somebody who helped you kind of get a lot out of what was surrounding you, or somebody that just helped you make those positive decisions. So I want you to just think about who was that adult in your life, and jot down just a couple of words, phrases. Who was it? You know, it could be a parent, it could be an aunt or an uncle, it could be a family member, it could be a teacher or a counselor or a coach, it could be somebody from a faith-based organization or a community organization, but who were they, and just a couple words about what it is that they did for you. So take just a couple minutes to jot that down. The only rules of WIBIT are that you write. So I'll give you about 60 seconds or so to just jot down a few things.
And if anybody doesn't have something to write with, let me know. I'll be happy to give you a pen or pencil. Anybody need something to write with? Anybody else? You good?
Got about 30 more seconds. All right, wrap up what you are writing. And I wish I had time to hear everybody's, but I think it's really important when we start talking about this that everybody has a chance to say their piece out loud, because it helps solidify this is what we're talking about when we talk about assets. So what I want for you to do is we're going to take about 5 minutes to share at your table who you wrote about, why that person made that difference in your life, and if there's only 1 or 2 of you at the table, turn and join another table, or get together. You've got 5 minutes. Give everybody a chance to share just a little snippet of who was that adult and what did they do that made such a difference in your life. And in about 5 minutes, we'll get back together, and I'm going to ask for a few volunteers at that point. So if you would like to told somebody at your table that their story was the best and that they should share, you can do that, or if you want to vote. But we will take a couple of stories from around the room. So you got 5 minutes to share with the people at your table what your story is all about.
Happy pie. Awesome. Oh, that's awesome. What a treat to have somebody drive you. All right. So who's the first? I said a man named Tom Sweat. He was like our junior pastor, I think, in my church, and he just kind of, my memory is he was kind of in charge of our youth, and I was really involved in my youth group. So it was funny and approachable. We did a lot of fun activities. He was fairly young-ish, so I guess that helps approachable. He was cool in comparison to our parents. I liked that he was very approachable, non-judgmental, he was active. I looked at him. He was a good person.
Oh, well, I would say my cousins, I'd say, they're a lot older, because my father was way younger than me, so they were probably 10, 15, 20 years older than me, some of them. But they were always listening. Everyone would always listen without being judgmental. Also my aunt and grandmother, they were like a trifecta. They would call me. So like my mother and I would talk, and I might be annoyed, and my grandmother would call me, and my aunt would call me, and then we would all talk. They were pretty cool. They would listen and they would be. But my cousins were like good workers. They were good to run things by because they were younger.
They were younger, but
They were old enough, but younger, yeah.
They didn't feel like they were there at all. Nice. That's lovely.
So I put my grandmother, because she listened to me as a young person. She was pretty, like, for her age, she was somebody that was fun. She would, like, water ski, and, she was just a fun person, and she would always listen. Yeah, until she was in her 90s. She was just like, very young person.
Great grandma was like,
You had a great grandma? How awesome is that? Not many people ever will say that.
it's hard to,
Extreme matter to you. Someone is extreme. That's pretty amazing. Not many people get to say
How
that.
old was she?
Oh, 98. Wow. Not many people get to say that either, really. You've got some good stock going on there. Got nice people. Now, is your family here?
oh, well, this is my that's my ex-husband's grandmother.
Grandmother,
That's still alive. And
But
my
like all
family
your-
are from the Caribbean, but they live in New York and
Okay.
Florida, and some of them still live in New Jersey. Oh, yeah, Dad's, Papa's, some of their cousins live in Miami. Yeah, we will have to go visit.
Well, you can go.
Visit. It's very
We have about 1 minute left.
now,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mary, would you say that you have anybody that you can talk to? That's cool. His brother. He's 10 years old.
He's been there already.
All right, if you will wrap up your conversations, and if you moved tables, you are welcome to head back to where you started, or stay at your new table with your new friends. Totally up to you. Who has a great story that they are willing to share with us? Who has a story, and you don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, this is the best person in the whole wide world, this is the best story in the whole wide world, but who had something that resonated with others in your group and you kind of talked about it a little bit, or maybe you don't know if it resonated or not, but you're brave enough to say, yeah, I'll share my story.
Well, I'll share mine, but it's not that interesting.
That's, you never know.
So I chose my high school French teacher, and I chose him because he, I mean, maybe other teachers were like this to other students, but for me, it felt like he was like the one teacher who appreciated each student for their uniqueness in a way. He didn't just see us like all as the same. We weren't just like a bunch of kids. He like really kind of knew us. And it wasn't like he was warm and fuzzy or anything like that, but I think he just kind of, he was a little bit younger, he kind of got it, and appreciated us as individuals, I think.
That's a perfect story. That's not, I'm not looking for who was that superstar, oh my gosh, my track coach was an Olympic athlete, because that's not who are asset builders in most of our lives. In most of our lives, our asset builders are our mom and our dad and our grandmother and our grandfather and our brothers and sisters who are older than us and our French teachers, because you're not the only one who said you're French teacher, because I heard some other French teachers around there. You know, there are coaches, they are our art teachers, they're that youth pastor who really listened to us. So that was a perfect example. Is anybody else willing to share, who didn't say their French teacher, willing to share just a little bit about what their story was? I do this all the time. I'm not afraid of silence, so. Anybody? Y'all had some good ones.
Sorry, I had a
I heard
French
them. I know you have. You're not allowed to share. Anybody else?
I had an elementary school teacher who saw some things that were going on in my family. This was long before mandated reporting. And she took me and a bunch of other kids under her wing. And when I look back on it now, the ones of us that she took under her wing and she put us in a group together, singing. She wasn't a singing teacher. She put us in talent shows and different things. And when I look back now, every single one of us in that group had an addicted parent. And she saw that even when we were 4th and 5th grade. Didn't make a big deal out of it, didn't call it out, anything like that, just made sure that we had some safe places and some safe spaces.
Excellent. Excellent. The things I heard when I was walking around were multiple people who said, she listened to me, she trusted me, or he trusted me to behave, to follow through. I love what you said about that your French teacher saw you as an individual, saw the students as individuals, and there was that level of kind of recognition of it's not just to see faces in my classroom, but there are people here. One of your colleagues sitting out here said, that coach made me feel like I was a superstar. Several people, it was funny because I heard this like 3 times in a row, really felt like as I walked from one table to another, they were tough. And sometimes we think that's what we don't want. Sometimes we think, especially as teenagers, I don't want the tough teacher. I don't want the tough coach. But that's what, as adults, we can now look back and say that's what helped me get to where I am, is that I had that. So what you just did is shared stories at your table of asset builders in your lives. And every single one of us has had asset builders in our lives. No matter what kind of childhood we had, no matter what kind of environment we grew up in, and no matter if you couldn't think of one when I put you on the spot right now, you had asset builders in your life, and you probably still do. And your kid has asset builders in his or her life. You are probably one of the top ones, and I'm going to give you some ideas tonight of how you can do a little bit more asset building. But your kid also probably has a teacher or a coach or a youth person that's connected to some sort of organization that they're involved in that is also an asset builder. And the 40 developmental assets have been around for a long time. This is research that comes out of the Search Institute in Minneapolis, where it is colder than Antarctica right now. My sister lives there, and they did that boiling water challenge, and it's really crazy how cold it is out there in Minnesota. And they've been doing this work across the United States since the late 80s. And they started out with just 30 assets, and then as they continued to do more research, they added a few more piece by piece, and now we're at 20, and now they are 40, and now they have this whole other thing that they've distilled it down even further into like these 5 things that you need to know to build positive relationships, which is a different talk because this is the 40 asset talk, but it's also available on the Search Institute website if you look for that. But they decided in all of their research that there are 2 big buckets. There is a bucket of internal assets and a bucket of external assets. Our external assets are those things that very much are on the outside that lots of other people can influence for us as a young person or as an adult. And so there are 4 categories in each of those 2 buckets, meaning that there are 8 categories of assets. There are 40 assets total, and we're going to go through them, and we're going to go through them really quickly. Typically when I do the full asset training, it's about 6 hours because we get into it, we talk about what they are, we look at them. I'm going to go through them really fast, but I'm going to, I've got some data at the end as well to say, like, this isn't just touchy-feely, like, oh, this is great, and I love my kids, and I'm building assets for them. There's real solid data behind it about how important this is in young people's lives. I'm going to share that with you, and I'm also going to have time for there to be some questions or discussion if you are interested. So I'm going to go really quickly, but I think as I do, you are going to see and hear how those people that you just talked about were asset builders in your lives. So the first 4 assets are our external assets, and these are support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive use of time. Now, I am a total nerd because I teach on these assets so often that I have favorite categories and I have favorite assets. And so in overall, my favorite category of assets is boundaries and expectations. And I'm so excited when I get to talk specifically to parents. I do a lot of this with youth development professionals. I get to talk to parents about the importance of boundaries and expectations because it is huge. And I never realized when I was teaching about this years ago and didn't have a child how important it would be for me to remember how valuable boundaries and expectations are, because we fight them every single day, and I don't see that getting any easier as he gets older. So these are our first 4: support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive use of time. And then the next 4 are the internal assets. These are the assets that are more intrinsic to our young people, that a lot of them need a little bit more push for us to build these assets, because they're assets that are internal to our young people. And so those are a commitment to learning positive values, social competencies, and positive identity. I love the social competencies piece of this, and I'm so glad that it's a part of it, because as a youth development professional, as somebody who has worked with middle school and high school students for my entire career, social competencies is the piece that I think is so often missing from what our kids get at school. And what we forget sometimes to teach them, because it's easier to just do it for them. It's easier to just, make those decisions or whatever it is. We'll look at what the specific assets are. I've worked with so many young people that get to our summer leadership program and we're asking them to make decisions and they don't know how, because they've never had that opportunity to make any kind of meaningful decisions. It's just been, this is what you're going to study, this is the test you're going to take, this is what you're going to do. And so they haven't been engaged in decision making, and they get to their sophomore or junior year of high school and they're just clueless about how to go through that process of decision making. So I also love the social competencies category of assets. So our support assets, there are a whole bunch here. The support assets are really just about the love and support that a young person is surrounded by. Family support is the #1 asset. So that is the top one. Is do they have a family that surrounds them with love and support? Family, in the case of assets, can mean whatever that kid's family is. So I've done this training with foster parents and been able to say to them, it's not about bio parents. Foster parents fall into this category. I've done this training with folks who work at children's shelters. That's their family. I've done it with kids who live in those kinds of environments where they talk about their asset builders are the house mom at that house where they live, because here's what she does for them and here's how that works for them and the role that plays in their life. Another support asset is positive family communication. Is there dialogue in your family? Is there that engaging conversation? It is other adult relationships. So does that young person have other adults in their life that they can trust outside of that immediate family unit? It could be extended family that's out there. It could be other adults in the community. Do they live in a caring neighborhood? This is one of those assets that speaks to the if you see the kid out in your front yard doing something you know that the kid's not supposed to do you call their parents? Do you know their parents to call their parents? That's what they're talking about when they do that research on caring neighborhood. My former boss used to always tell the story when she was training on this about how when her son grew up, that he couldn't get from one house to the other without that parent picking up the phone and saying, now here's what Casey's doing right now, and that sort of thing. And if he got in trouble at school, there wasn't email at that time, you couldn't text the parent, but by the time he got home from school, the school counselor or the teacher had picked up the phone and called to say, this is what is going on, which leads into that caring school climate and that involvement with the parents. And both of those things really surround that kid with love and support, which speaks to the last one, which is parent involvement in schooling. And we know that just as a matter of statistics across the country, that the older kids get, the less their parents are involved in school. And we also know that the more parents that are involved in school for their kids, the stronger that asset is for them, the less likely they are to be involved in all of these high-risk behaviors. Even though they don't like it, it's important for them. My poor child, because I know way too much about substance abuse and assets, he's doomed. He has been doomed from the start, because we are never leaving being involved in school and knowing all his friends, and he's going to love us when he gets older. The next category is our empowerment assets. These are assets that show us that the community values our young people, that they see them more as resources and less as problems, that our young people are able to give service to others. Their young people are involved in their community, they're giving back to their community. Service learning is a real valuable thing. Doing work in our community builds these assets for young people. And the fourth empowerment asset is safety. Because if a young person doesn't feel safe in their environment, and that can be physically safe, emotionally safe, any kind of safety, if they don't feel safe in their environment, they can't be empowered. Because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to speak up in that math class where you don't understand what's happening, and then you're going to get behind. If you don't feel safe in your after-school program, then you're not going to get the most out of that, and you're not going to be able to have those assets built. So our young people need to feel safe, to feel empowered. Our fourth category of assets, my favorite, is boundaries and expectations. So the first three of these are all about boundaries: family boundaries, school boundaries, and neighborhood boundaries. These assets are all about, does the family set appropriate boundaries? Does the school set and follow through with appropriate boundaries? And does the neighborhood have boundaries? So it's about not only, the family part is about, are you setting a curfew for your kid and holding them to it and checking them when they come in the door? And do they know what you will do, and you will do it and you will follow through with it if they get caught drinking or smoking or whatever it is? Do they know what those consequences are? Do they have a hand in helping to set those consequences, perhaps? It also then goes to the school. Does the school have reasonable boundaries and expectations for them while they're there? And what happens if they break those? What happens if they go outside of those? Is it ignored? Is it ignored if they are a certain kid or a certain person's child or a certain athlete or whatever it might be? Or is everybody held to those same boundaries? And then in our neighborhoods, if kids are getting in trouble, if kids are doing something, do they know which house is the party house? And that's the house that they're going to go to because they know that there aren't boundaries at that house. So knowing what those things are and being attentive to those are all assets. Having those things in place are assets. And then the flip side of that is the expectations. And so it's adult role models, positive peer influence, and high expectations. My very favorite asset of all the assets is the high expectations asset, because it is the one that says young people need for us to set high expectations for them. We need for them to say, you won't drink until you're 21, and that is my expectation. You will go to college. You will get your driver's license. You will have a job. Whatever those things are, they need us to set those. They need us then also to give them the supports to get there and to do whatever we can to make that happen. But sometimes we get too wrapped up in, I don't want to let my child fail, because none of us do, that we forget that when we tell them mediocre is good enough, that's all they're ever going to get to. And so this asset category says that when we set high expectations and then support our young people in getting there, they're going to be more likely to meet those. Maybe they won't meet all of them. Maybe they're not going to, get their doctorate in 3 years and, go on to make millions. But they're going to go farther than if we said, I don't really care if you graduate from high school. So those are our boundaries and expectations. And then we move to our last of the external assets, which is constructive use of time. So these are creative activities, youth programs, religious community, and time at home. This is, are our young people engaged in positive, valuable things? Or are they sitting at home on whatever is the new Wii, because it's not Wii anymore, and I don't have a teenager yet, so I don't know. Are they playing Fortnite all the time? I don't even know what Fortnite is, I just know it's a thing. Like, is that what they're doing all the time? Is that what y'all are doing back there? Yes. Is that what they're doing? When they're at home, are they having dinner with you? Because there's so much research that says the more often that we have dinner with our kids, the less likely they are to be involved in high-risk behaviors. It seems like such a simple thing. It seems like a silly thing, because we all know those kids who had dinner with their parents every single night and they still got drunk on Friday nights after the football games or at the football games or whatever it is. But there's so much research that says that there's a lot of value in having that time at home, as well as this time in creative activities, youth programs like the youth action teams that Terry mentioned, in religious community. Part of what I love about the assets is it doesn't say this religious community has to be any one thing. It doesn't say they go to church. It says religious community. And I think that's really important for this day and time that we live in, that the assets, you will see in some of my data toward the end, the assets span every religion, socioeconomic group, age, race, gender, all of it, because it doesn't matter where that kid came from. The more assets he or she has, the better off they are going to be. And so these are our constructive use of time assets, and then we move into our internal assets, which start with commitment to learning, which is achievement motivation. Are our young people motivated to do well? So that's that intrinsic kind of motivation. School engagement, do they feel connected to their school? Do they feel like they are engaged in what they're learning? Do they have a reasonable amount of homework? Homework is actually an asset. This is when I get into arguments with both parents and kids about that, how much homework is too much homework, and at what age is homework appropriate. But having some homework every evening to continue to provide that connection back to the school and back to the school day, and potentially even then build that parent-student connection, although I don't know how you do math once they get past 6, so might be calling some of you for coaching on that. But there's that homework, are we working with them is an asset. They're bonding to school, and reading for pleasure is an asset. When a young person identifies that he or she reads for pleasure a few hours a week, that is an asset in their lives. And I have a lot of teens when I do this work with them who push back on, I don't have time to read for pleasure. And we have some conversations about how do you then find pleasure in what you have to read for school, and how can you kind of turn that around so that you still are instilling that love of learning. Then we move into our positive values assets. So these are caring, equality and social justice, integrity, honesty, responsibility, and restraint. And these assets are all about, does a young person place high value on these things? Do they place high value on caring about other people, on being honest, even when it's difficult, and on restraint? And when we talk about restraint, it can be alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, it can be sexual experiences related, can they show that? Can they know when is it a good idea and when is it not a good idea? And when they are able to place high value on that, that is an asset in their lives that helps them get farther. Then we move to my favorite category of the internal assets, the social competencies. These are all about these life skills, these things that our young people need in order to be successful out in the world. Planning and decision making, interpersonal competence, so they know how to build friends and friendships and maintain those and engage with others. Cultural competence, resistance skills, which ties back into that restraint asset from positive values, and peaceful conflict resolution. And so these assets are all about, can our young people do these things? Do they know how to plan and make decisions? Do they know how to resolve their conflicts without getting into fights and those sorts of things? And having those things, I think this is one of the ones that's very, yeah, of course, if we have these things, we're able to get farther in life. And then we move into positive identity, which is our last asset category, which is personal power, self-esteem, sense of purpose, and a positive view of personal future, which just means, can they see themselves 5 years from now doing something that they want to be doing? Can they see themselves 10 years from now happy? There's lots of research on when you talk to kids in really, really bad neighborhoods across the country, and what they say at 7 or 10 or 15 is, in 10 years I'm probably going to be dead. I'm either going to be in jail or dead.